Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sin, Curator of Public Programs at ArtScience Museum. It's a remarkable occasion for us today with the launch of Iris van Herpen, Sculpting the Senses, a retrospective exhibition that illuminates the mesmeric alchemy of one of the most visionary designers of a generation, Iris van Herpen. We're immensely privileged to have her with us for the exhibition's opening talk this afternoon, where we'll be discussing her multidimensional approach to creation and the idea of transformation that informs her practice. And to open today's program, please warmly welcome Honor Harger, Vice President of Art Science Museum and Attractions at Marina Bay Sands, for her address. Honor, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to welcome you to the opening talk where we have the extraordinary opportunity to explore the ideas behind Iris van Herpen, Sculpting the Senses. Firstly, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Iris van Herpen herself, who's here with us today. It's an honor to present her first solo exhibition in Asia. And Iris, we are so grateful to you for your generosity in sharing your remarkable collection with us. I'd also like to welcome our partners, the Musée des Arts Décoratifs from Paris, whose collaboration has been essential in bringing the exhibition to Singapore. Iris van Herpen is one of the most innovative fashion designers working today. Her work exists at the intersection of fashion, art, science, and technology, redefining what is possible in haute couture. She's dressed some of the most recognizable figures in contemporary culture, including Beyoncé, Björk, Lady Gaga, Scarlett Johansson, Fan Bingbing, Naomi Campbell, to name just a few. Through advanced technologies such as 3D printing and algorithmic design, she creates garments that challenge traditional ideas of fashion. What makes Van Herpen truly unique for us at ArtScience Museum is her deep engagement with science. Her work is informed by marine biology, morphogenesis, particle physics, and astronomy, translating the hidden structures of the natural world into wearable forms. This exhibition presents 140 of Van Herpen's most significant works, offering a comprehensive overview of her career. Her designs are placed in dialogue with a diverse selection of contemporary artworks, natural history specimens, and cultural artifacts, reflecting the breadth of her inspirations. ArtScience Museum's presentation expands on the original exhibition developed in Paris by incorporating regional perspectives. Marine specimens on loan from Singapore's Lee Kong Tan Natural History Museum resonate with Van Herpen's own explorations of the sea. And works by Southeast Asian artists situate the exhibition within a broader cultural and scientific context, connecting Van Herpen's global vision with Singapore's rich natural and historic heritage. The exhibition unfolds as a journey from the oceans to the cosmos, structured across 9 themed galleries. It begins with designs inspired by water and marine life, including pieces from Van Herpen's Sensory Seas collection, which translate the movement of oceanic organisms into flowing sculptural forms. As visitors move through the exhibition, they encounter works influenced by growth systems, microbiology, mycology, and sensory perception. For this iteration of the show, we are thrilled to be presenting the world premiere of a new sculptural work by Van Herpen, Unfolding Time, which is on show in the Forces Behind the Forms gallery. And many more of the garments on show are inspired by scientific research, such as works from the Magnetic Motion collection, created after Van Herpen visited the CERN particle physics laboratory. The final galleries expand into speculative futures and planetary systems, showcasing works from collections such as Earthrise, which reflect Van Herpen's fascination with the universe. This show is part of ArtScience Museum's new season, Mind and Body, the Art and Science of Being Human. At a time where artificial intelligence dominates global conversations, this season shifts the focus back to what it means to be human. At the center of the season are two major exhibitions, Mirror Mirror, Journey into the Mind, which explores neuroscience, and today's exhibition, which shows us new views of the human body. The season celebrates everything that makes human intelligence unique and irreplaceable, and the way the human body moves through space with instinct, feeling, and purpose. So many people have worked tirelessly to make today possible, and I'd like to take a minute to just thank a few of them. First and foremost, my thanks to Iris van Herpen and her studio team, including Salvador Breed, Christian Riesch, and Sophie Berman, and Keisha Benvenuto. We know how much this exhibition means to you, and we deeply value you. To our partners, the Musée des Arts Décoratifs in Paris, represented today by our friend Yvon Figueras, thank you for creating this incredible show. My deepest gratitude to our design and production partner, Space Logic, and to all our local collaborators and lenders. There's too many to name them. I am sure Deborah will cite some of them in the panel discussion, but we want to single out our friends at the Le Conten Natural History Museum for their collaboration. Our thanks to our media partner, Vogue. And my deepest thanks to my team here at ArtScience Museum, including our programs team, led today by Zhang, for bringing this talk to life. And to my exhibitions team, led by Adrian George, who've worked so hard on this show. His team, including Joel Chin, Rafi Abdullah, and Chelsea Chai, have worked so hard on the exhibition, as has our brilliant curator, Deborah Lim, who's poured her heart and soul into this project and who you'll be hearing from very soon. Iris van Herpen shows us how fashion can be more than fabric and form. It can be a bridge between science and art, technology and tradition, and the body and the cosmos. She challenges us to rethink not just what we wear, but how we see the world around us. This afternoon, you have the rare opportunity to hear from Iris herself. Take this moment to listen deeply, engage with her ideas, explore her artistic universe, and ask your own questions about the future of fashion. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Honor. Well, the original exhibition was conceived at the Musée des Arts Décoratifs, and we have the Director of International Development and Production here with us this afternoon, Yvon Figueras. Yvon, please welcome Yvon to the stage for remarks.
Hello, sorry, as many French people, I have to read a little bit, but that will be not too long. Just the first presentation of the Musée des Arts Décoratifs is a museum founded in 1905 in France by members of the Union des Arts Décoratifs. The museum houses display a collection with furnitures, interior design, art pieces, religious paintings, objets d'art, tapestries, wallpaper, ceramic, glassware, but also, and one of the most beautiful collection of fashion. And that's why we present regularly fashion exhibition, very famous one. First of all, about the exhibition, I thank you so much, the ArtScience Museum. Sorry, I have to. Sorry. I'll have to thank the ArtScience Museum, which under the leadership of its vice president, Honor Harger, and its director of program exhibition and museum service, Adrian George, welcoming us today for this special moment, this special opening, and this special conference in this remarkable and unique architecture. Thanks to the patient and unfailing ArtScience Museum team to do the exhibition with us for this partnership, especially its two highly talented curator, the so precious Deborah Lim, helped by Rafi Abdullah, who, based on highly innovative, unexpected, and fascinating object originally designed and produced by the Musée Décoratifs and Iris van Herpen and her team, I've met the challenge of once again developing an amazing approach of the exhibition. This breathtaking aesthetic sensory immersive proposition, already acclaimed by the international press, and above all, one of the greatest Parisian successors for 2024, would not exist without the prolific alchemy of one of the most multi-talented artists of recent years, Iris van Herpen, and a no less talented curator, Chloé Pitio. They met in 2018. It was the date that in fact, they start working together because Olivier Gabet was before the friend of Iris. That was the first meeting. Olivier Gabet was the director of the Musée des Arts Décoratifs at this time. He met Iris, and Olivier asked Chloé Pitio, who was not the specialist of fashion, in fact, but particularly dedicated the object of the collection of the museum. He asked Chloé to meet Iris. So it was the birth of a really friendship, a very complementary collaboration, and that the exhibition is the result of all this proximity, this complementarity, many discussions. So it's not really an exhibition that you can see that you already visited. In fact, this is an experience, and that's why we are very touched by the fact that the ArtScience Museum decided to present it, because it's something totally new, and that will not be the same kind of fashion exhibition you can see everywhere in the world. It's an exhibition of science. It's an exhibition of art. After the presentation in Paris, we decided to present the exhibition in different museums: Brisbane, Australia, Singapore is the third. And then after that, the exhibition will be presented in Rotterdam in a new venue. What is interesting is that everywhere, every time, the exhibition is totally different. We can start with the same list of work. We can start with the same chapters. It's like a book, but every day, each time we presented the exhibition is totally different. And we can move it. We can move it because we work with Iris, we can work with the team, we can work with Salvador about the sound, with Christian, with Keisha, with you. And it's always a teamwork, and it's always an experience for us and also for you at the end. And that's why it's very interesting. And that you will see in the exhibition is not only the beauty of the pieces, the beauty of the set, but it's especially the discussion between the works of art, the scientific proposition, and the work of Iris. And it's, in fact, the point of it. And I hope you will enjoy it. So thank you, Iris. Thank you to you. Thank you to your team. Thank you, Honor, George, Deborah. The Musée des Arts Décoratifs is very proud to be presented here also with Iris, and enjoy the exhibition and enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Yvon. We're going to go into a fireside chat with Iris, but also joined by Deborah Lim, our exhibitions curator. For the first hour of the fireside chat, it'll be a moderated conversation, and for the last half an hour, we'll open the floor for questions. So if you have anything that you're curious about, and we'd love to get the questions to Iris, please get them to us for the second part of the program. Please join us on stage. First of all, I would love to start with the origin story, but also contradictions. There is a very interesting polarity between elements in your work. Um, the hand and the machine, craftsmanship, but also innovation. And your childhood seems like such an interesting contradiction to what you do today. Could we get you to share a little bit, maybe about Famel, but also your interests when you were growing up?
Absolutely. I grew up in a small village in the Netherlands, like 1 hour away from Amsterdam, and it was a very beautiful place, lots of nature. My mother was a dance teacher, so I also did classical ballet from a very young age, and this upbringing, I think, is still visible in my work. I really learned a lot about the connection between body and mind and how transformable we are. And this movement and this element of transformation that you can feel when you're dancing, but that you also can feel when you see someone dancing, is something that I try to embody into my designs as well.
You are formally trained in classical ballet, but in terms of the creative expressions that you were exposed to while you were growing up, I learned that you played the violin, you paint, and these are really interesting because um, um, uh, maybe we'll get to this question later, but maybe I can ask you about when was the first time that you discovered fashion, but also what led you to want to pursue this discipline?
Um, Fashion wasn't all around me because I wasn't in the big city. But I discovered fashion through my grandma, who loves theater, and she had a big collection of historic pieces and also contemporary fashion designs on her attic. So as a young kid, I would go up to her attic and dress myself and transform myself into these characters. I remember putting on this huge wedding dress, and I would envision this whole character and this whole story around it. And I think ultimately that's something that I still feel today. Fashion is related to everything that we imagine. And it's about storytelling, and it's about recreating ourselves. It's about being an artwork, a living piece of art. And of course, I wasn't aware of that when I was dressing up on my grandma's attic, but I could feel the essence, and I think it has inspired me to go into fashion on a later age. Yeah.
Earlier you mentioned that you are very hypersensitive to the body in motion, partly perhaps owing to your background in dance, but also exploring this relationship between the body and the movement. I hope I'm right in saying this seems to have been the starting point for a lot of your collections. How does this deep connection that you have to the physicality of the body inform the way that you imagine the possibilities of the body in your designs?
Yeah, it's absolutely about the body in movement, but also the mind in movement. I think movement is everywhere on the scale of micro and on the scale of macro. Even when we go inside our bodies or in our mind, it's all transformative um, at every moment. So we are in flux and the world is in flux, and I'm trying to get that essence of all the invisible layers around us into the designs.
Um, you have described your process as being quite chaotic. And you rarely kind of start with visual references, which I think could be slightly different from a lot of the design practitioners in the room today. Can you tell us a little bit about what this chaotic process looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. My process is not linear. Like what you learn on the academy, what I also got taught is you have inspiration, you do your drawings, then you find your materials, and then you start production. But with me, it's much more complex. I actually start without inspiration and I start experimenting. usually with materials and techniques. I do that with the team in the atelier and also with people outside of the atelier, like architects and artists and scientists, biologists. It's a wide range of people that I try to include into the process. And from those experiments, I usually start draping on a mannequin. And parallel to that process, I live. So I get inspiration from many different areas, and I start embedding this inspiration into my draping process. And usually, when the draping is done, the studio starts making the design, but I still alter a lot. So I still continue the design process even when we're making. So yeah, it's a complex process.
Well, we've heard a little bit from Anna, but also Yvonne, when they were describing your practice, that you apply the most artisanal of the haute couture techniques into your complex creations. But at the same time, you seem to utilize technology to an extent that's seldom seen outside the laboratory. But your youth has nothing to do with technology, so it seems. Do you recall when you first started experimenting with technology?
I do. The first years when I started my label, I was really focused on the traditional craftsmanship within haute couture. So technology wasn't part of my tools. Um, and there is so much to learn within the traditional techniques. So it was really good for me that I focused purely on that. But I remember that I wanted to make a water dress purely transparent, really evoking the transformative power of water, which is kind of abstract. And I realized I could not make that with my traditional tools within the haute couture. So I had to go out of my comfort zone. And I remember meeting two architects in Amsterdam that were using the 3D printing at the time. And I was mesmerized by that process, even though it was very far away from anything that I was familiar with. Um, some people think that I'm tech savvy, but I'm not. So it took a lot of time to go into this new realm and to embed it into my process. So I started collaborating with architects to learn, and I think I never stopped doing that. So every collection is a learning process with the new experiments that we're doing, and I really like going outside of my comfort zone. So that is something that never stopped from that moment on.
You're not tech savvy. That's something new that I learned today.
Yes.
But still on the topic of technology, maybe we get a sense that it includes such a multitude of materials and new technology within each collection. Can I take the opportunity to ask if there might be an emerging technology or new material that you're exploring to use perhaps for an upcoming collection?
Yeah, the last months I have been focusing more on living materials. And of course, the studio is very focused on sustainable materials and regenerative ingredients, also recycled materials. But the next step is really to go into living materials that stay alive even after making the construction of the look. This is still in early stages, but I hope to be able to show the first designs on that this year. But I feel it's the start of something much bigger, and it's something that I will be focusing on within the coming years much more. Yeah.
We'll keep our eyes out for it. I'm going to turn to Deborah now. Deborah, I think it might be useful to share an overview of how Sculpting the Senses and its thematic explorations are presented. Could we get you to talk a little bit about that?
Of course. So Iris van Herpen Sculpting the Senses is really about the body, its relationship to clothing, the environment, and our futures in a rapidly changing world. Aside from, and of course, most closely featuring the 140 looks and accessories that are exquisite from Iris van Herpen's collections, these are placed in dialogue with contemporary artworks, natural history specimens, And aside from those that toured to us from the Musée des Arts Décoratifs, our ArtScience Museum project team with Iris's very great advice and consultation throughout the exhibition process also included local and regional content as well. So the exhibition unfolds across 11 different zones and 9 different themes. We go from micro to macro, we go from the depths of the ocean to the cosmos, and throughout the entire experience, you also have sound designs that were customized by the head of sound at the Iris van Herpen atelier, Salvador Breed. And I think that it's a really transformative experience as you move through every zone. There are light and dark zones. You experience something different every time. And by the time you reach the end of the exhibition, you come out feeling transformed and transcendent.
This exhibition has been so close to your heart, and I just wonder maybe we can recall something that Yvon mentioned earlier about the show being such a resounding success in the cities that it has traveled to. So from Brisbane to now to Singapore, is there something about Iris's practice or the exhibition that has connected with you personally?
I think, Iris, the fact that you are so exploratory in your research and development, that you don't see a kind of division between fashion and art. You know, it's all one universe and we're all moving through this constellation together. That has been the most inspiring process for me. What we were talking about within the museum team is if there was one designer that ArtScience Museum would work with at the intersection of art, science, technology, and culture, it has to be Iris van Herpen. We've spoken about your work for years, and the fact that the MAD produced this beautiful exhibition and toured it to us was really a great honor. I think the transdisciplinary nature of your practice, the way that you work in collaboration with architects, with artists, with designers and scientists and researchers, you know, that heavy focus has really just given us a lot of creative material to work with and develop this show.
Iris, this is such a comprehensive overview of your material works over the years. Looking back at the exhibition making, particularly in the first iteration that was presented at MAD Paris, how was it like for you to have reflected back on your career, your practice, your collections in such a way?
Yeah, that was very special. I have worked on the exhibition before Paris for 5 years with Chloe Pitot, the curator. And it was a very special process because indeed I like looking forward. I usually don't look back at my archive, but for the exhibition I was doing that and I was realizing the amount of different disciplines and layers that I put into my work, because for me that's such a natural thing to do. It's an organic process, the way I keep on adding new layers, new disciplines into my work, new techniques, new materials. And by looking back at it and diving into the archive, I got to see my work in a different light. And I also started seeing that some areas that I feel are very important, like the sculptural hangings and also the performative side of my work, are really important, and that I wouldn't want to put more time into that. So I actually learned about my own work by going into the archives. Yeah.
You mentioned about this new discoveries, but could I also ask, like, were there connections between collections that you were able to draw with the opportunity of presenting your practice in such an exhibition that you have reflected on with hindsight?
Definitely. The exhibition is not chronologic. So finding only 9 themes to summarize the essence of my work was pretty difficult. Because even in one collection, there are so many influences that define the works that I really had to extract the essence. And that are the 9 themes that you will see here in the exhibition. So it really travels from micro to macro, from life before humans were on this planet up until the cosmos. And in between, we travel to the body and also inside into the body and into the mind. But it's not all about humans. And I think that is something present in my work. I, of course, am inspired by the human body. That's my muse. And that's where I start. But we as human beings, even our identity is so connected to all the other layers of life within nature and all the other organisms around us. I really believe in the Gaia theory that sees the planet Earth as one organism. And I like to look at the human body from that perspective. So this exhibition is about much more than the human body alone. Yeah.
And on this note, I'd love to ask about how you draw your inspiration from such diverse sources. And one that we certainly get a very close sense of is how your work is so embedded in nature and natural phenomenon. Could you share a little bit about this recurring fascination that you have with the natural world, and the particular relationship that you have with it in your creative process?
Yeah, I think my fascination for nature relates to our own perception of reality. And I think both art and science can give you a wider perspective on what we define as our own reality. And nature is so much more complex than we realize, and so much more complex than what we can see. And that's why biomimicry is an essential way of working for me, really finding the intelligence within nature and also the forces behind the forms, like the way the cycles are growing within nature, and finding inspiration to design my own design process. I think as a designer in my early days, I was very focused on the end result. Now I hope to create works of art that are really in sync with nature. So they are not standalone and they are not static. I hope they can evolve over time in the future, like the whole evolution within nature is doing. Yeah.
I'm gonna go to Deborah, because one of the things that I know you and the team have been working very hard on is making sure that the aspects of nature's beauty, the mystery and its chaos, was made very palpable in the iteration of the exhibition here as well. And this is made partly through a beautiful collection from the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum in Singapore. So I would love to get you to talk a little bit about that in the context of maybe how the exhibition has been adapted for the museum.
Sure. So when we first received the mandate for the exhibition, we knew there were certain contemporary artworks and natural history specimens that would not tour to us, and we thus used that opportunity to really expand and cast the net wide to the local and the regional. When we thought about natural history specimens, there was only one museum here, which is the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum, and Honor and I had the privilege of entering their vaults and going through their extensive, over 1 million pieces of marine specimens, taxidermied beehives, and so forth, to really pick and choose what would represent Southeast Asia and the region. And every time Iris and I had a curatorial meeting, I'd say, here are 20 specimens. Where do we go from here? And we picked these out together. One of the rare ones that I like to talk about is the helmeted sea urchin, which is buffeted by the waves against the coast. And so it's a rounded, almost alien-like purple urchin that's in our vitrine downstairs. And it's very rare for us because it's the first time we've collaborated with the Natural History Museum. Each time the show traveled, for example, in Kogoma in Brisbane, they had the Queensland Museum, which supplied their specimens. But for us, it was a new experience to reach out. Beyond Li Kongqian, we also had private collectors like the Singapore Fossil Collectors Society and Black Crow Taxidermy and Art that gave us exquisite insect specimens, python skeletons that you'll see downstairs as well.
I know it's going to be hard asking you this question. It's a bit like asking you to pick a favorite child. But was there any sort of new aspect to the adapted iteration for here that has particularly stood out for you and the team?
In terms of zoning, I always talk about this because we were asking about favorite zones as well. Skeletal embodiment, which talks about the looks as almost a second skin, going into the anatomy, the muscles, and the nervous system to unpack that concept, is one of my favorite zones. And what we did here was we had the iconic crystallization top and skirt, the very first 3D printed piece of haute couture that Iris ever presented and in the world from 2010, in dialogue with Courtney Matteson's Malum Geminus. It's a commentary on the bleaching of coral reefs, and it's a beautiful 7-meter wide wall installation. She's an environmental artist. And we placed this with a Dimetrodon skeleton, which is a 270 million year old skeleton of a lizard that predated the dinosaurs by 50 million years. So if I have to pick a zone and pick a memory, that is the one that I would stick with.
Collaborations are important for institutions, but equally important for artists. And it can be such an amazing conduit for experimentation, but also kind of wandering into uncharted expressions. So it is. I was wondering whether there was a particular collaboration that had allowed you to see your work through someone else's eyes, in a way that's been quite profound for you.
Oh, there's many. And I also must thank all the artists that are part of this show that I have been collaborating with. And one I would like to highlight is Philip Beasley. He's an architect from Canada that I have been collaborating with for 11 years now. And there are multiple designs in the exhibition that I've done with him, and he taught me so much about materials and techniques. I really see him as a mentor, and he really, like some of the scientists I've been talking to, he really opened up my mind in what I'm able to do with material innovation, and to not be afraid for also including techniques outside of fashion. He again works with a multidisciplinary team like I do. So by combining the studios, there are a lot of different disciplines and knowledges combined. And there is one very special room in the exhibition, and that's the atelier. And there are hundreds of samples that I've been creating. And there is many samples that I've been creating with Philip Beasley. So I really invite everyone to look at the samples, because they are really the birth of every look. And you will see the relationship when you walk through the exhibition to the very early samples and ideas. Yeah.
You've also said that making dresses for a female body is your starting point, and you see the female body as your muse, and also your canvas. We know that you've worked with so many amazing women across the last decade or so. Is there any special project that has been quite close to your heart that you might be able to share with us?
Again, there are so many special projects. But one of the earlier collaborations I started was with Björk, and those collaborations are really close to my heart. I still collaborate with her now, so it's a long friendship. And she is very open in her creativity, the way she works. So anytime that I was asked to design something for her, it was do whatever you want to do. And that is very aware, and it's really amazing for me to see my universe merging with her universe, because they're so both so multidisciplinary and so sensoric. So emotional as well, that I really feel very close to her and the creative process. Yeah.
I'm gonna come to you, Deborah, for a little bit because we know that you've seen the iteration at Kagoma before the show traveled here. So I wanted to take the chance to ask you how your relationship with the exhibition making has changed from the time that you knew that you were working on this exhibition to seeing the actual show in Brisbane and now finally seeing the show come to life in our exhibition galleries here in Singapore.
I mean, when I first received notice of the show, we had a 300-page slide deck from the MAD that we were sifting through. And the items were photographs, and I didn't necessarily know the scale or the concepts as much. And then in June, I traveled to Brisbane, to Kagoma, to see it in a completely different space. So the MAD being part of the Louvre Galleries, a very kind of classical low ceiling space. Brisbane and Goma being this huge high ceilings. They had a lot more floor area than we did. They used atriums. They had more celebrity images, more dedicated designs. And coming to us, where we're kind of like the intersection of art and science, we've got the curves of the Moshe Safdie architecture. We brought in the platforms. We changed some zones as well to include references to nature, like in Water and Dreams, where the platform is shaped like a nautilus. So I think it just really materialized to me over the course of the process how it started as quite an abstract idea, beautifully generated with Chloe and with Iris, to a very personal exploration of our team of how we could celebrate the themes, but also wrap in the local and the regional and bring it to life. And I think in every venue, it's become a completely different exhibition to the place and to the time.
And this is a question for both of you. To get you to lift the curtain a little bit, was there a particular milestone in the development of the exhibition that has felt quite significant, maybe for you, Iris, and the atelier, but also for you, Deborah, and our exhibitions team? Maybe we can go to you first. Iris.
Oh, you go first. Yeah.
Um, the milestone for me was the final installation day because there was a moment when we were looking at the Cabinet of Curiosities being completed. And this was a complex installation, but when we had all the artifacts in the artworks hanging, that moment of completion of one of the most complex zones, I think our entire team just sort of sat on the ground and took it all in and embraced the fact that we were here and the exhibition was ready for view. And I think that when we looked at guests' reaction to the cabinet last night during the preview, people lingered there for a long time. And so that kind of brought it all to fruition again, that this was the masterpiece of the show.
For me, I think it was the opening last night because I love seeing people interact with the exhibition. Always when you're preparing an exhibition, even though all the galleries are finished and you walk through, it doesn't feel finished for me. For me, it is finished when people start to interact and project their own perception onto the works. So yesterday evening for me was really magical. Yeah.
Iris, your design aesthetic is a very unique one that embraces the future, both literally but also metaphorically. How do you think people will understand your work in the future?
Wow, that's a good question. How do people understand my work in the future? Well, that depends on the future and on people. And that's a hard one to predict. That's an impossible question.
Maybe we could talk about the near future then.
Yeah.
What do you think the near future might look like for you, yourself personally, but also the label?
Yeah. Well, what I hope, of course, is that I have a very specific idea of fashion. I really feel fashion is art and haute couture can be art. And everything that I do is slow fashion. Everything that we create is a one-off. So all the looks that you see are single works of art that are not created to go into production or even to hang in the store. Because what I really love is to create looks for someone, and that's a very personal process. And I think it's a very pure process that also leaves a very small footprint, which feels really important for me. That's actually a main reason that I'm purely dedicated to haute couture, to be aware as a designer and as an artist of what I leave behind on this planet. And I feel that I need to choose of what I add to this world. And personally, I feel that there is enough ready to wear to choose from. So I really want to add something to this planet that feels meaningful. And I think that's a philosophy that sometimes misses within fashion. And I think everything that we create is a balance between art and commerce. But I hope that fashion will find a better balance between the two. So that's what I hope for the future of fashion, that it becomes more in sync with the planet that we live on, and that designers also become more conscious on what they add to this world. Yeah.
That's a good note maybe to go into audience Q&A because so not calling LaSalle out, but I know that there's so many of you in the audience tonight. We have more than 20 students and faculty members from LaSalle College of the Arts School of Fashion by way of Cersei Hennestrosa, the heads and support. So we would love to take questions from all of you. So please let us know if you have a question by raising your hand. Our producer, Charmaine, is going to come to you with a mic.
Hi. Thank you so much, Iris. Thank you so much, Deborah and Baoxin. That is such a great talk. And I had the privilege to visit the exhibition way before today. And nice seeing you again, Iris. So I just wanted to, by the way, I'm Lydia from LaSalle College of the Arts, representing Cersei because she's not here at the moment. Yeah, so I'm just gonna dive into a little bit more a head start maybe for students who are going into the industry. So the students that I have here with me are our final year graduating students. So they're gonna go into the industry. One of the questions that I wanted to continue that I had with you a couple of days ago is that the idea of fashion and science. So the idea is that a scientist and maybe fashion, we have never worked with scientists before, personally me myself. So it's more asking about how much of the work that you are doing from the past decades, of it, the percentage of it, has that idea of that science being involved in fashion, and also how do you really work with another area of fields that is so much of this scientific area and compared to the creative process is very different from design. Maybe finding that balance in both. Yeah.
Very good question. It is kind of difficult to combine arts and science for a main reason that they live in very different time zones. Like developing a new material or collaborating with a scientific institution can easily take 1 or 1.5 years before you have any result. And fashion is a very fast system that you have the deadlines with the shows. So it was difficult, especially for me in the beginning, to combine the two because I was trying to fit my scientific research or collaborations within the timeline of my deadlines of the shows, and that was simply impossible. So I learned to have parallel processes. I am working on the collection for the show in Paris, and parallel, I'm always doing research on the background. But I'm fine if that takes longer than the deadline of the show. So I have continuous processes going on And whenever something is finished or good enough to go into the design process for me, then I embed it into a show. But I had to learn to separate the two, because otherwise it's simply not possible. Yeah.
Thank you for that very wonderful but practical question, Lydia. Do we have another question from the audience? We will go to the lady at the back row, please.
Hi, I'm Divya. Thank you, Iris, and thank you, Deborah, for all this conversation. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that when you dress people, it is a very personal thing, like for haute couture. And I was just wondering, how do you incorporate their personal values into the design you dress them in?
Yeah, that's through dialogue. When I design for someone, I like to get into their mind, their lives, just ask what they feel inspired by. And sometimes someone comes with more abstract input to me, and sometimes it's much more specific, like, oh, I love these looks. And they really resonate to me, and I start drawing from that. But I like it either way. Some people give a lot of insights into their lives, into their philosophy of life, and I start designing from that. And other people come with materials or techniques that I have discovered, and they ask me to design something from my own archive. And both are really wonderful to work with. Yeah.
I love that you took the opportunity to ask a question. There's such a industry mentorship one. Thank you, Divya. We have a gentleman in the second row on the side.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm a year 2 student from LaSalle doing fashion design, and I have a background in biotechnology. I want to ask about how the fashion and identity actually, because you say it's about recreating ourselves. So who does Iris van Herpen, who do you dress for and what identity you're trying to show? Yeah, that's something I'm curious about.
Who do I what?
Who do you dress for and what's the identity that Iris van Herpen is trying to show?
Well, when I design, aside from when it's for a client, when I design for my collections, I don't have an identity in my mind. Some designers work with specific muses and they design for them in their minds, but I don't do that. I see the body as my muse, but it's not an identity. It's purely the body itself and not a specific woman. And I think that's because my process, or when I'm draping, it's quite meditative, and I'm in somewhat of a more abstract reality. And then after the design is done, I go back to this daily life, I would say, and then identities and specific women come into my mind, but that's on a later stage. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. We have one at the back.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing. You draw from a lot of different sources of inspiration, and you're constantly finding new sources to inspire your work. I wanted to ask, are there any things that you have particularly inspired you recently? Any kinds of technology, art, forms of literature, anything, and why have they inspired you?
Oh, that is a good question, but I am working on my next show. So all of the inspiration I'm gathering at the moment will be revealed in July. So I'm not gonna say too much about it. Yeah. No, when I work on a new collection, I really like to keep it still quite secretive, because it also gives me the freedom to change still. Yeah, and I'm layering all of the input that I'm gathering at the moment. Yeah, but it's very inspiring to be in Singapore. I was at the botanical gardens yesterday, and I found that really inspiring as well. Yeah.
Actually, it's a question that we want to ask as well, but thank you so much for strategically putting it to Iris. Do we have another question from the audience? Can we go to the lady in the second row? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Miyuki and I'm from LaSalle. So my question is, as someone with such a strong creative vision, how does it feel to have your work showcased in different contexts around the world? And would you say it expands and morphs the original concept behind your work, or does it distort it?
Is it distorted? What?
Or does the original concept get distorted depending on how it's put in context?
Oh no, I really feel that the exhibition evolves in every place it is. And I think it's really special that we can tailor the exhibition for each region. And that gives it a new meaning, but that also teaches me on where I am. And it was really wonderful to work together with Deborah on selecting the works that we have added to the exhibition. So I'm really enjoying this process, and I think that's also really the way I work within the collections. Like, I always like to keep evolving things, keep changing things, and that's actually why it's really good to have a deadline either with an exhibition or a show, because otherwise I would just continue changing things. Yeah, that's really in my nature. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Yeah. Do we? Oh, we have a gentleman right at the front with a question.
Hi, my name is Lionel. I'm a computational designer and researcher. So I'm very intrigued with your work since 2010. And as a scholar of your entire repertoire, we see a change in how computation is applied through the years. Can you tell us a bit more about your relationship with these computational techniques since your first release of the water dress and your collaborations with the architects, as well as the crystallization dress, so on and so forth?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been collaborating with various architects that are specialists in the computational design. Um, and I must say, I'm not a specialist per se myself. So it's really wonderful to collaborate with these architects like Daniel Wiedrich, for example, or Isai Bloch, because they have a completely different education, and they teach me also on how to generate some of these patterns. So it's a really wonderful collaboration always, because I can teach them on the volumes and the relationship to the body, and also the movement that I'm looking for. And that was one of the challenges at the very beginning, back in 2010, when I did my first collaborations with these architects. The 3D printing technology was very focused on architecture alone and not on fashion at all. So all the materials that were developed by these companies were rigid, and they didn't have the souplesse from the fabrics that I would be working with. So I was a little bit in a limbo of knowing where I wanted to go, but the technology wasn't there yet. But I had to dive into it anyway, because I was very confident that the materials would evolve over time. And by showing it onto the runway, also inspiring these companies to start seeing that fashion is also an industry that they can look at. And throughout the years, the 3D printing companies started to see that fashion is, like architecture, a very creative industry that they can start developing materials for. So I had a lot of conversations also with the engineers working at these places to inspire them to think of flexible materials. But flexible materials are always much more difficult than rigid materials, especially in the printing. But that's actually special to see in the exhibition as well. You see an evolution of these materials within 3D printing. And also when you see looks that you don't necessarily envision it is 3D printed, often there are combinations and hybrids of materials that are 3D printed, that are combined with embroidery or plissé or more traditional techniques. But it was really through these relationships with the architects that I could do these experiments. Yeah.
It's so lovely knowing that there are Van Herpen scholars in the room. Thank you. Do we have another question? All right.
Hello? Oh my god, so loud. Sorry. Okay, so my question is, your work embodies an expanded, almost meditative state of being, merging the organic and the futuristic, the ethereal with the structural. As an artist exploring transformation, destruction, and rebirth in my own practice, I see creation as a form of alchemy. How do you navigate the space between surrender and control in your creative process, allowing the unseen to shape what becomes tangible?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. And a good one as well. Because I'm definitely a control freak, if I can say it like that, or a perfectionist where I like to have control on every millimeter that is within the design. I work very three-dimensional. I like to layer materials, but it has to be in the very exact draping silhouette that I'm doing on the mannequin. And even if it then is transferred to the final design, we often have to put one drape to a new mannequin. And even if millimeters change, it doesn't feel right for me anymore. So that is always a difficult part in the process. But because I'm so focused on this perfectionization, I have also challenged myself to let go of it sometimes and to disrupt my own process. I feel as a designer throughout the years, it's really healthy to change your design process, even if it feels very uncomfortable. When you change the process itself, the outcome changes as well. The more control you get, the better, but um, there is a limit to it. I feel when I have too much control, it doesn't feel right either. So sometimes I invite collaborations to disrupt my own process, to go into a very uncomfortable area, but also to, and there's a few examples in the exhibition, to disrupt the process even more, like the water dress, where we did a project when we splashed water onto the body, made a photograph, and then I would replicate that moment. So I wasn't really designing, I was replicating a moment of chaos. And the same happened with the magnetic dresses and shoes that are in the exhibition. I had no control on the texture. It was the magnets that were pulling the textures, and it was actually nature deciding what the design would be. And it feels very uncomfortable for me at first, but it feels very exciting at the same time. And I think with some of these projects, it makes it possible to have a more unconscious energy into the designs rather than deciding everything through your mind. And that's also why I like draping so much, because when I'm draping, I feel like I'm sculpting on the body, but it's a very unconscious process because the material is guiding me and I don't have anything in my mind on what it has to be as an outcome. So it's like dancing with the material, and it's intuition and an unconscious energy that I bring into the work. And I feel that's really important, especially in dialogue with the more technological works. When we do the 3D prints, every millimeter has to be designed within the computer. So I feel it's really healthy for me to bring in chaos at the same time. Yeah.
Thank you for the very poetic question around tensions. Do we have another question from the audience? The gentleman in the second row, please.
Hi, Iris. I want to ask about a business-related question. So a big part of the fashion industry is business, and I wanted to ask how much does the business aspect affect your creative output, and especially when you were just starting out as a young designer, and whether you have any advice for designers that are about to start their own label.
what I found really important throughout the years is to protect my own creative freedom. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do within the industry. I had a strong intuition, and I still have that I need to stay independent in order to protect my creative freedom. And a lot of the decisions I've been making the last few years, I could not have done if I would have been part of a larger structure where I would not have the ultimate control on the decisions I would want to make. And I can advise young designers that want to start their own label is to really make your decision very consciously and not to think that there's only one way to success. Because within the art academy, there are certain models, business models being highlighted and expected from the designers to go into ready-to-wear, to be bought by a larger structure, etc. And that is definitely one way of doing it, but not the best way for everyone. So I really believe there are different business models to work from, and to as a designer not only create your design DNA, but also to create your own business model, because that can be innovated as well. And I feel personally, the standard industry model that you see today is very old-fashioned and is also at its limit. And I can really advise the young generation to also be innovative in the way they want to sell their work and the way they want to present their work. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Do we have another one? All right, the lady at the back. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Helen. I'm not a student from LaSalle. Well, thank you so much for sharing about how you tend to feel a bit control freak over your process, but at the same time, you're learning to navigate with the chaos. I've noticed in your in the exhibition that symmetry tends to be a recurring theme in the way you approach your stuff, but we also know that in nature, symmetry isn't 100%. So how do you navigate your relationship between symmetry and asymmetry?
Very good question as well. You will actually see that even the symmetric looks are never purely symmetric. We know that by phases, right? When you make something purely symmetric, it looks very unnatural. And it's the same with these looks. Because it's a lot of handwork, it would even not be possible to have it entirely symmetric. But a lot of the symmetric works will look very symmetric at first, but if you start zooming in and take your time to discover it within all its details, you will find small differences. Just like in nature, it's always the case. Often in nature, things look symmetric, but they aren't. And it's the same in these works, and that is really mostly because of the handwork, and that it is simply impossible to have it purely symmetric. There are also a lot of asymmetric works in the exhibition, so it's always a dialogue between the symmetrical and the asymmetric. Yeah.
Thank you. We've moved through the conversation quite quickly this afternoon. I think we might just take about 2 to 3 more questions before we wrap the program. So if you have a question for Iris, please take the opportunity to ask it now. Honor.
Iris, I know you've had the opportunity to work with many different science institutions, many different scientists over the years. I wonder if there's one example of these scientific collaborations or opportunities to visit key science sites that's really inspired you that you could tell us about.
For me, one of the most inspiring places on this planet is CERN. And there's actually a very beautiful image in the exhibition at the very end when you walk out of Cosmic Bloom. There's a photo done by Nick Knight with one of my works in front of the Large Hadron Collider, which I believe is the largest machine on this planet. And it looks at the origin of life and the building blocks. And it's like the cathedral of science. And there are 10,000 different scientists working there. I don't know all of them, but I've spoken to a few of them, and they have challenged my perception of reality. And that's ultimately what I hope to evoke with my own works, is that I can challenge people's perception of reality and to expand their minds into seeing new possibilities. And that's exactly what CERN is able to do with me as well. And it's just through conversations and about hearing the research that they are doing, or the dreams that they have in what they hope to discover. So I have definitely tried of bringing this curiosity into my own design process. Yeah.
Honor. Final question, maybe? All right. Okay, we'll take 2 questions then.
Hi again. Sorry. I was just wondering, so you talk a lot about how you like to work with different materials and you're very innovative with your works, but I was also looking at how you kind of incorporate a lot of nature and marine biology, and so I was kind of wondering how you balance that intersection of growth and innovation with that sort of traditional beauty that we've experienced in the past.
To me, technology is often actually a tool to come closer to nature and to understand nature. Because nature is so much more advanced than any technology that we have created so far. That I feel, for example, the Large Hadron Collider is this machine to come closer or to understand nature, right? And even the tools that I'm using, the innovative tools in my design process, for me, they are tools to come closer to nature. So, yeah, I don't see that they are very different from each other. I really see them as help mechanisms to make me understand the processes within nature more thoroughly. Yeah.
Thank you. The last question for Anna, please. Anna at the back, yeah.
Thank you so much for that conversation. It was really inspiring. I wanted to just comment that, your practice is so cross-disciplinary. It's so collaborative and open, which to me as a fine artist is very inspiring because it makes me want to go out and find these collaborations for myself. I just wanted to ask out of curiosity if you ever see yourself ever moving into other forms of making outside of the fashion medium and taking the elements that you currently use to create something entirely different, even if it's, for example, dressing large structures together with architect collaborators, or even placing the materials you currently use and putting them into alien environments.
I love that question. Yeah, I have experimented with going away from the body sometimes. One example is a project that I did for the National History Museum in the Netherlands, where I collaborated with architects. And I usually collaborate with architects within my own practice, but here it was the other way around, and I helped on the design of the new architecture. So it was working on a very large scale for the first time. And I really love doing that, so I definitely want to do more within architecture. And there's also a beautiful example in the exhibition. It's a sculpture that I made last year, which was shown in Paris also last year. It's called Unfolding Time. And it's a sculpture where I moved away from the body into a larger scale And it's been really inspiring for me to also find that freedom to create a new dialogue between the body and the space around it. Because I really feel when I work on sculpture, it inspires my new body works, but also the other way around. Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. It's been such an incredible privilege getting to lean into the conversation today, Iris, but also sharing insights into the exhibition making, Deborah. So thank you so much, both. Our sincere thanks to Honor for contributing opening remarks alongside Yvon earlier. Keisha for really coordinating this public engagement with us so closely. Huge love. My amazing colleagues, Charmaine, Neil, June, Ken, but also Jillian at the front of house, who have really formed the backbone of the production for this opening program. We have our documentation crew, Jack and Faith from Conclave, and also Terrence on photography. We hope all of you get the chance to see Iris van Herpen sculpting the senses very soon, and also get to enjoy the journey that her works will bring you on, and time travel a little bit, like what she mentioned earlier, but also cross over into different galaxies. It's been exceptionally lovely having all of you join us this afternoon. Thank you so much for being part of the ArtScience Museum story. We hope to see you back here again, and please enjoy the rest of your afternoon.